Thank you, recording in progress. Big brother. That's what I meant to say, Robert. Thanks to everybody for the meeting that we had in the preparation and the execution of the meeting with council. I thought that was really good. I hope everybody felt that way. We'll talk about it later. But we've had some extra meetings over the last month or so in preparation for that. So let's endeavor to get everybody out of here on time. I know our people that are actually working here would like to do so, and you folks from communication. So we're going to flip the agenda. We're going to allow our second topic to go first, and let's talk about the communications and education.
Comments first? Comment or?
Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah. Pam, having recognized you as a citizen with comments, do you have any?
Did roll formal?
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's do it. Go ahead and do a roll call just for the record.
I
Yeah.
thought we dispensed with that, but I guess we did.
Into it.
I don't know how clear it is on the video, but I figured just for the video, so it's clear who's
All
here.
right. No, that's good.
Okay. Dave Evans,
Here.
Jeffrey Selzer,
Not here.
Kelly Honaker,
Not here.
Derek Mills. Yep. Matt Duff, Michael Gloden, and Tom Grant. Alrighty.
Okay. Pam, you're off and running with 3 minutes worth of airtime.
Thank you. My name is Pam Chaparro. I live a block and a half from here. So I wanted to talk today about the scope of TMB's work, and I regard you as a system function in the city government, not a subsystem. And so I am going to say, while the design of streets and intersections is interesting, it is vital to staff, and we have actually a good transportation planning staff doing that.
We do.
The pilot projects are a great example of applying something where you test something and then are going to make it happen in physical reality with the best informed data behind you. But notice I mentioned data, and we need data at all levels of government, and we need data at the city planning level too. Now, that's where we're missing it. We miss the city plan entirely. If you look at the comprehensive plan, it's neither. It's neither comprehensive nor a plan. And the TMP is part of that. The TMP must flow from that. But the comprehensive plan needs to integrate functional results, functional reality, and functional future results, outcomes of plans in the future based on data. And so those functions, I think primary functions, one of them is transportation, another one of them is fiscal or economic, and that has to do with both the city finances, but also for the finances of residents and businesses in the city. And then I think we can all think of other functions in the city we're interested in, and I don't want to overlay my opinion there, but there's two, we don't even have that yet in the comprehensive plan. We don't know the outcome. There's not really a plan there, and we don't know the outcome. TMB is vital. Some say transportation is one of the two. So in this year, really, for the TMP, it's more than 5 years old. We should be starting on an update. You folks, that's what I, as a citizen, hope you all do. I have watched your meetings. You are systems thinkers, more so than many of the boards and commissions. So I have faith that you all can do this and have an understanding of what I'm asking for. So transportation as a function of the city means that you would understand the transportation of corridors throughout the city and vehicles, bikes, peds, all of it, the corridors through the city, all of them. We need to understand all. And then the arterials and the collectors and the residential streets as a system. And then you folks can start to apply, and we can understand what projects have priority and all of those kind of decisions that flow from that. So I just wanted to urge you, you're great system thinkers, have some good staff support. We need transportation as one of the two elements of a city plan that should be going on soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. I would encourage you to put some of those thoughts into a little white paper, because I know you've talked many times about the transportation as a system, which I think we all would subscribe to that. Certainly as a retired systems engineer, I would. But I think that you might put a little more meat on those bones because 3 minutes doesn't really allow you to express that. But thank you. And with that, are we ready for?
I can intro you guys if you'd like. I don't know.
I like a Shane intro.
Right? That sounds
Shane intro,
fancy.
sure.
So this is David and Sharon. So they've been working with us. David is in communication. Sharon works with PD, but they've been really helping us with the Safer Streets initiative and kind of, coordinating all these parts, right? Getting communication out, helping us as planning staff kind of articulate what we're doing in a way that people who aren't in the transportation world can understand. So yeah, so we appreciate them, and that's all I got. So.
Yeah, there we go. Well, thank you guys very much for inviting us down. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the work that you guys do. This is very, very important stuff. It's been a real honor to get to work on this project with the folks in Public Works and everyone else that we get to work with, and you guys as well. So I'm David. My title is Senior Media Strategist, which is a fancy way of saying I do social media, newsletters. I help out with marketing and events. And so, I got, I've been working with the Safer Streets team since early this year, since kind of day one. And so, communications, of course, is, to my own horn, a very vital cornerstone of this project, right? So the idea of, promoting pedestrian bicyclist safety and, all the other efforts of this initiative, we've been approaching that a few different ways. And we're at kind of a turning point where I think we're going to even be able to grow that approach. So far, a lot of what the Safer Streets communication strategy has been about is about, I got one more. There we go. Yeah, look at that.
Read my mind.
Yeah, there we go. So, we have a lot of different channels that we get information out through. We have a newsletter, an email newsletter every 2 weeks called the Littleton Report Online. We have the Littleton Report print edition newsletter that's published every 2 months, goes to every mailing address in the city. And then we've got, the full host of social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. We produce videos as well. And so, from February, when this really kind of kicked off in earnest, to now, a lot of that communications work has been about kind of communicating the nuts and bolts of what this project entails to the public. So, we've kind of had this cadence where every 2 weeks we're publishing a new article with a lot of help from Shane and Kenna about, some of these early initiatives. You can see that bullet list on the left there. That's a lot of the sort of real on the ground work that's been taking place. I suspect you folks have probably read a lot of those, considering the role that you're in. So, that's about, that's involved kind of what communications is about, which is you're taking this technical stuff that you're getting from engineers and planners, you're turning it into something that is, broadly accessible to the public, so that they understand the process, and kind of walking folks through that. So, and then of course, I think, one sort of defining characteristic of Safer Streets is this has kind of been a build the plane while you're flying it kind of project. I mean,
People
this is
say that all the time, but it doesn't work.
working in this case. No, so I mean, this is obviously, this has been on a very accelerated timeline from a lot of public works initiatives. And so, that's kind of been, how the communications has been as well. We're out there at a very regular pace, making sure that folks, see the work that's going on. If you're seeing, new stuff in your neighborhood, this is what it is. And, I think that really kind of kicked into high gear with the pilot projects. And that's something that I was, I've been really glad to work closely with these guys on is, you know, this idea that, hey, there's gonna be new stuff in the ground and on the street near your house. What is that? How does it work? Why is it there? So, you know, that's been a really cool piece. You know, I worked with Kenna to get to, you know, help develop a map of where they all are. Emily did a great job writing out, she wrote out this whole glossary of all the components of these, you know, I think one fun thing about that idea of taking technical data and turning it into something digestible by the public is, you know, deciphering or translating engineer speak. And
Translate it into English.
yes, you know, because you know, it's a lot of jargon and technical terms and acronyms. And so, you know, Emily helped sort of, you know, demystify some of that. And so, you know, and then that also kind of moved us into another really important piece, which is making sure that we're not just standing on the mountaintop shouting that this is all the cool stuff we're doing, but that we're also finding ways for people to tell us, you know, their thoughts on it and how we can work on that. So to do that, we recently, or in July, we launched the pilot project survey that I can pull up and let you know how many responses it's gotten so far. So that's a survey in which folks can provide direct feedback on what they think of all those different types of street crossings, bike lane enhancements, and so forth that are being installed around the city. And so that has been really gratifying for a few different reasons. You know, one, I just think it's, you know, it's crucial that this, you know, is a two-way communication with the public, that this isn't just, you know, a bunch of bureaucrats saying we have all the answers and so now we're gonna go do it. So, you know, that survey's been live for a while now. We've got, let's see, got 77 full responses here. You know, there's some fun little parts of that. My favorite is this little bar chart right here, because as you can see that big fat bar on the top, that's people who think that pilot projects have made safety, quote, much better. So I like that nice big fat bar at the
What's
top
that
there.
big fat bar, one question?
One below, that is people saying, how will this pilot project affect how frequently you travel in the area? That big fat bar is, that's people saying it will have no impact on how frequently they will travel in that area. And we've had some discussions and we actually think, you know what?
It's a fine metric.
Yeah.
I think if it was showing that they wouldn't be going there, then that's something we should be concerned about. But if it means that they're gonna continue using it, but if they feel as though it's safer.
I think that's right.
good.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Well, and doesn't Littleton have a lot of self-contained communities where only the residents are gonna interact with them to begin with?
Exactly. A little more on that survey, you know, it's been gratifying, you know, there are a wide range of, you know, qualitative responses too. That's also very important. You know, that was kind of a big piece of that, was just letting people, you know, overall, what are your thoughts on this? Not just, it was important to gather the quantitative and the qualitative data. So, you know, and that qualitative piece where people are just kind of allowed to share their thoughts. You know, and we have some really positive responses, and we have some very, you know, I think what's really impressed me is we have some really nuanced responses. We have some folks saying, you know, that some element of a pilot project could be tweaked in some way to make it more effective. This is stuff that's getting back to the engineers and the planners. But you know, I also felt like reading some of the positive stuff. I grabbed a few of the ones that I saw in there today. This respondent says, good common sense improvements and a good use of tax dollars. I hope to see continued investment in similar improvements across the city. Let's see, somebody else said, this project has made it easier to want to slow down in a car, and I have seen cars stop well before pedestrians to get to the intersection. This is my neighborhood and I give this project 2 thumbs up. Another one, it works perfectly and keeps people from speeding. This project allows for better visibility when driving a car. All these projects help to slow down car speeds. I won't read you the ones from the people who say this is all a big waste of time and money, because those are in there too, but that's not as fun to read out to the board, right?
What's their point though? Give me a couple examples of why they think,
Well, let's see here. Let me.
is there any grist there for us to chew on?
There are, and like I said, some of them are very thoughtful. Some of them have very specific, you know, criticisms or thoughts about it. Let's see here. This person is complaining about trash in a pond. I'm not sure why.
A little bit off topic there.
Yeah, let's see here. You know, here's, for example, here's, there are criticisms like, you know, here's one for the pilot project enhanced crossing at Lowell and Arrowhead. This person says it's a bit better, but cars still do not see the crosswalk as they should. Could be more visible.
So they're saying we're not doing enough.
Some of
People
those.
saying, you know, I really think I can go 45 through a school zone safely, so none of those.
There is some of that. Here's one, here's one of the,
So they did get my letter.
word for word. Yeah. Here's another one, you know, here's an example of, I mean, you know, and look, this is the case with, I think, any outreach project. You know, this person says, this is all a waste of money. I never see any bikes on this street. Parents are, you know,
Okay.
those kind of things. So, you know, so we it runs the gamut.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, you know, but we obviously, we take this feedback seriously. We take it into account. You know, this is incorporated into what the full scope of the pilot projects is, which is exactly as Pam said, this idea that we're testing things out. You know, we are seeing how, you know, and these guys do an excellent job of utilizing traffic data. And this is, you know, communications is bringing in another form of data, which is those, yeah.
So David, I asked that question only because I think we really want to communicate the why. What's in it for me? I mean, we're all powerfully motivated to keep those school zone safety, to keep the crosswalks safety for pedestrians, to still allow people to drive where they need to, but to do it in a way that doesn't threaten anybody else. And so whatever we can do to try to connect with people's emotion around, this is why I'm doing this. This is why it's worth it to slow down. And this is the better community that I'm getting. I think that might be a message that we want to pound just a little bit louder so that people are willing to get on board and make sure that they're really part of the change.
What a perfect segue into part 2 of this communication strategy. No, and so, you know, other stuff that we've done so far, we produced a cool video with our city manager, Jim Becklenberg, and Kenna a couple months ago where we were talking about some of these different components. You know, Public Works has been very active at our meet, greet, and eat events over the summer in which they got to, you know, have some real face-to-face time with a lot of the public. So, you know, this is all kind of phase 1 of this communication strategy. This has all kind of been, you know, the first 6 months or so is about, you know, communicating, okay, what's the actual on the ground activity here? Phase 2 really is getting into that why piece. And this has been a really exciting project that Emily and I have been working together on a lot lately that we're working on getting off the ground, which is about that why. And it's about humanizing this work. It's about taking this out of talking about C curbs and length of bike lanes and this kind of stuff and getting into, you know, why do we need to do this? Why is it important to have a community where it is safe to walk and bike? You know, the ideas that we've been working on, Emily, since she came on board, has just been a fountain of ideas and it's been marvelous. You know, she comes to us from Dr. Cog with a lot of great experience and kind of this broader regional approaches. So some stuff we're working on there. One piece is identifying what we call champions. People in the community who can speak to the experience of biking and walking in Littleton, who can speak to why, you know, what they're experiencing as they walk and bike through the community. You know, what could be improved, why it's important for drivers to pay attention, and why it's important to get community buy-in on this. So, you know, we've thought about, you know, that could be students in Littleton Public Schools. It could be, you know, folks who work by the side of the road on construction projects. It could be folks who, you know, enjoy walking to downtown to enjoy, you know, bars and restaurants, that kind of thing. You know, this is gonna be something that we could work with you folks on. This board, you guys could be great at, you know, helping us identify those champions in the community, folks who would be able to speak to that, you know, importance. Crossing guards outside the schools, these kind of folks. So that's one thing we're talking about. You know, we're working on these ideas. It might be PSAs, it might be stuff that we even expand beyond the scope of our normal channels. You know, we're working on it, but it might entail things, radio ads, or you know, advertising that extends beyond our normal city channels. You know, I've done a lot of work in the past. I've done similar projects around homelessness. We did a series last year called In Their Words, in which we interviewed people who are working their way up from living on the streets and are getting back on their feet. And we shared those stories. And that was about, you know, taking an issue that is polarizing and divisive and putting a human face back on it.
I will give you $100. You can figure out how to get the dumb ways to die soon into this campaign.
Have we not been talking about the TikTok side of all this?
Yeah.
You know,
I'm just saying, and I'm not sure, I mean, was about rail safety, but if we could figure out a way to
yeah,
do that, that would.
yeah, no, that's actually, Emily and I were having a conversation the other day about, you know, also how to keep this fun. You know, because I mean, this is fun, improving the ways you get around your community, that's fun. It doesn't all have to be.
Maybe instead of dumb ways to die, great ways to live.
There you
Oh,
go.
I like that.
See, beautiful. Yeah, so I mean, you know, and that's another piece I think that we're bringing into this is, this doesn't all have to be a bunch of dour stuff about danger and threats. I mean, you know, this is fun. And we want to bring that side into it too. So phase 2 of this communication strategy, from our, you know, perspective, is about moving beyond communicating that nuts and bolts engineering and infrastructure stuff into how do we turn this into a culture? How do we say that this is really something that is baked into Littleton's culture? You know, that we are a community that takes traffic safety seriously, not just a public works department or a police department that takes those things seriously, but how do we incorporate that into Littleton as a community?
I have a question. So, I think a lot, like, for instance, the people saying this is a waste of tax money, this is a great use of tax money, you know, the divergence is there.
Yeah.
I think a lot of, we have like the transportation master plan, comprehensive plan, these things. But do we actually say how we prioritize things? You know, because like, you know, for instance, safety is one of our top priorities. But then, you know, like I'm thinking of like a first principles of transportation. You know, like if you were coming up with the first principles of transportation, what would those be? You know, that guide these types of decisions. And, you know, I think that could be good to create those and then to also share those with the public and say like, it isn't just people throwing darts at a board of what to do, like there's principles that guide this. And these principles have led us to these conclusions and these actions, you know, and I think that would be great because I think a lot of people think of it as like the whims of whoever's in a room, you know? So yeah, I think that could be effective as well.
I think it's a great point. I think, there are several people in this room who are much smarter than me and could speak to this better than I could. But one thing that, you know, we've been talking about recently, is, you know, potentially seeing in what ways we could weave the safe systems approach into transportation. That's looking at, that's looking at all facets or sides of how you create a culture of pedestrian and bicyclist safety and what those kind of cornerstones of that are.
Yeah, I don't think it should be whose voice is the loudest in the room, but what principles create the best outcomes and consequences for all of us, and I think if we shared those instead of talking about the whims, it might be received well, hopefully.
Are you talking on a more like sort of like metaphorical, like these are the things that guide just transportation planning in general? And that like the city of Littleton will be like kind of uses? Or, cause to me, it also sounded like frankly what we've been talking about since I've been here, which is this whole, are we going after, a safety action plan, a safety program for Littleton, which requires like some level of planning effort. And to me, it requires us to come up with an implementation plan, which has a level of here's what our objectives are, here's the actions that we want to do, and then prioritizing them by certain criteria such as difficulty to implement, level of impact, what are the resources we have, what is the equity impact, those type of things. Like, are you looking for that specific, like how does Littleton get to the decisions of these are the specific projects that we're working on, or like here's just sort of like the guiding principles of transportation planning that Littleton.
Yeah, I would say a mix. So I would say certainly the latter, without question, like the actual systems and things. But like for the TMP, for all of these, it seems like they have like, do you remember those old motivational posters that were like climb every summit, and it have a picture of a mountain? That's how they feel now. Do you know? And like, for instance, they had safety in a lot of those for the past however many years. And I can't see a lot of things that were actually demonstrating that safety was a top priority. Do you know? And so like actually having some, like for instance, the person who said, this is a waste of taxpayer dollars, like I would say, do we have the expectation that all types of road users should be able to use any, like not any street is too broad, like not Santa Fe, we don't want people walking on Santa Fe, but like generally for these types of roads, should there be space for all types of modes of transportation? Yes. What infrastructure do we have that's making it so that they're like, it should be a logical conclusion, from my perspective on why we do what we do. There's obviously some, desire and things like, people's desires and things like that mixed in there. But just a framework of, everyone should be able to get around town generally on whatever mode of transportation they choose, kind of a thing.
But you can't go into the weeds because you've got to be able to sell it and the span of attention that you're.
Exactly, yeah. And there's, brevity is the soul of wit.
Yeah.
We go on for 15 minutes explaining the first principles and stuff, we'll lose them. But if we can connect with, Robert pointed out, some humor, connect with your community.
Yeah.
Show a picture of a wreck, not like that. Police officer, connect with your community, not like that. I mean, we want people to enjoy living here, but we've got to give them a quick reason why they should be part of that.
I mean, you're all exactly right. I mean, it's like, we've got to, communicate priorities and principles, but we also, you're exactly right. You start, I mean, boy, when I start, when I write something in city communications about, the process by which the, policies and plans and so forth, like, yeah, you do start losing folks. So and yet there is a balance to strike that, like you said, Matt, about like,
To share the why.
right, yeah. What are the principles? What are the, what are the guiding, sort of thought process behind this? So, yeah, I mean, these are definitely lines to walk.
Tough balance,
Yeah, these are lines to walk, but, so it's just, this is, and I just want to say, too, just on a personal note, I've got 2 little kids who are learning to, ride their little bikes. My 3-year-old's on his strider, my 5-year-old's on his, 2-wheeler with the training wheels and everything. And this is very, very important stuff to me personally. You know, this is my community too, and, you know, so it's been a real privilege to get to work on this. It's very important to me. And I can also say, from having worked with the folks in Public Works very closely on this, I can absolutely assure you that these are, that this is a very sincere and dedicated group of people who, are working very hard on this and are very intelligent. And, you know, I mean, it's like, this is the stuff these guys went to school for. This is, you know, they're doing the big stuff that they've worked for a long time to get to do. And, so, you know, it's a sincere, dedicated, intelligent group of people that are working on this. So that's my soapbox.
Thanks for helping move it forward.
Sure. Yeah, and any questions, please let me know and stay in touch.
Jump over to enforcement. So my name's Shira Pullman. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Littleton Police Department. And that means I have a really odd job. It is never the same. So I deal with all the media, all of the news coverage that we get, oftentimes on not such great topics, but sometimes on really fun topics, right? So I'm either at the library reading to kids with the canines, or sometimes I'm on the scene of a shooting. So, you know, it's always a different day. But I will touch on the police element. You know, when we identified Safer Streets Littleton, we said to ourselves, or at least in my own brain, how I organized it, I was like, this is a three-prong attempt, right? It's infrastructure, it's education, and it's enforcement. And so our department has upped at the end of school. So in the spring, we upped our enforcement tactics. We had different overtime opportunities for officers to go out and hopefully start having a presence and catching some people and telling them, hey, we're watching you, we're here, and we will not hesitate to enforce the law if you're breaking it. So these are the numbers that we had from the spring. We did stop, obviously, our increased enforcement of school zones over the summer, logically, right? There was no school. And now that we're back, we have started them again. I don't have those numbers just because school, I believe, started like last week or 2 weeks ago. But I can get those stats. Unfortunately, I will say that due to budget funding, we're gonna do our increased enforcement through the end of September. And then we do have to pull back a little bit coming into the year just because money is what it is. But we still have our officers who are patrol officers with that in the back of their mind, that if you have downtime, if you're not back-to-back calls, still doing this enforcement. The other thing that we had some fun over this summer, if you want to go to the next slide, was trying to implement some fun ways that we can partner with Littleton Public Schools. We can partner with our school resource officers, and we can also partner. We have what's called a SET team, which is our special enforcement tactics team. We joke it's basically other duties as assigned. You get to do all sorts of things, but they have electric bikes that we were able to acquire through a donation that was given to the police department from, I believe it was the Downtown Authority. I'm getting that wrong. LDD. Yes. They were able to do that, and so we now have our e-bikes as well that the officers are on, which allows them to not only patrol trails a lot easier, it also kind of you can get really quickly from point A to point B, because you can kind of go as the Raven flies, so to speak, instead of in vehicles. So we had a really fun time. Thank you for coming. People just came out of the woodworks and it was so much fun. We had Petal, who was really excited about it. We had Littleton Social Cycle. And I'm learning all this stuff about cycling because I knew nothing going into this. And so I'm so thankful for these people who are like, let's do it. I was like, they've got it. And even Target came, they donated, helmets. They were giving helmets out to kids, and they were giving out snacks and lights for your bikes and all these types of things. So we just really wanted to kind of create that basically with the kids and with our police officers, that those relationships, start building those relationships. So as we're moving into the fall, partnering with the schools to see if we can start doing some education campaigns. During that event, I had the opportunity to meet with a woman who unfortunately lost her husband in a cycling accident, and who's very, very passionate now about cycling education. And so she has something that's called Choose Safe. It's an acronym, the SAFE piece, but they go into schools and they have kind of these pre-planned, built things and they've got volunteers. So I'm really excited. Our teams are gonna meet with them tomorrow, actually, so I will have more information. So if you have questions following that or what our plan is moving forward with that. Obviously, like I said, Littleton Public Schools just got back in session. So we are looking to, as David mentioned, some of those community champions. Some of those teachers, some of those administrators are the community champions who already have relationships with our school resource officers. And so ideally, we can all partner together with the communications team and start implementing some of those education elements in the schools as well. I just don't know exactly what that's gonna look like at this time. Trying to think. The other thing is we were noticing a lot of individuals parking in bike lanes. Sorry, I'm on call as well. Okay, like if I go running out of here like a crazy lady, forgive me. But yes, and we decided instead of just immediately ticketing, right, soccer moms, I know you're at the park, like I know you're at an event, I know your kids are playing, whatever. We did create just little notices that basically says, this is Littleton Police Department, we're not messing around, this is illegal. We don't wanna ticket you, but we're letting you know it's not okay to park here and that we are monitoring that.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah, good.
As a first step, because it really does, I mean, you wanna build, teamwork. We don't want this us against you, kind of thing for the people in blue.
Right.
We absolutely want that to be a partnership. We need all of you to help us with this piece, because without enforcement,
Right.
you know, without law enforcement, there is no law.
Right.
So.
How do you do that in a community building
Yeah,
way?
that's a great way.
Yeah.
And if you've gotten a warning and then you do it again, shame on you.
Right, and we've seen, honestly, it was kind of interesting, we did it for about 3 weeks and then all of a sudden nobody was parking there anymore. So we were like, all right, this is great, goal accomplished.
In the previous slide, you had notations that you guys put out a lot of citations and stuff, which are usually fee tickets. Is there data on those individuals where they paid and resolved like successfully, or was any of them fought by basically to represent individuals that may have issue with school zones, or those who are like, okay, I messed up, I will correct this action?
That's a great question. I don't have that data off the top of my head. I might be able to find it for you. I will say that our officers, there are some shifts you don't want to pick up and there's some that you do. And we saw this over time quickly picked up because most people are like, I know, I'm sorry. That was, a lot more common reaction than somebody who's angry. Which I think you'll notice in the warnings are a little bit higher there as well than something that you would see if you're getting pulled over on Santa Fe or Mineral or Broadway. Because it's a lot of like, I'm a mom, I know, or I'm a teacher, I know, kind of a thing. So, and then also we are looking at just some bike events. There's a bike to school day, which we're throwing around that idea this morning, but looking at doing something more cohesive. So it's a community event, right? And everybody, we start here, you end at this school, but we can get our officers to go ahead and ride along with them.
The bike bus.
Bike bus.
Exactly,
Yes, the
yes.
bike bus would be amazing.
Yeah, but we figured why not include, folks from the city and our bike officers as well, and the kids and everybody, because it's that community piece, right? And that gives you time to talk. So.
Shira, did you have anything to do with getting, like Fox 31 came out and did a really nice segment, which we showed at the council meeting?
Yep. And yes, to answer your question, yes. I just pitched it because I was like, hey, school's coming, So threw in a car with one of my favorite officers, and of course Rudder, who he's the therapy dog. Nobody can be sad around Rudder. So yes, I pitched that and we got that coverage. And then I also am hopeful. I spoke with Ashley Portillos. She is with CBS 4. She did an original story back in the spring where she talked a lot. She interviewed Mayor Schlachter and, talked about Safer Streets Littleton and what is it. And so she's looking to do a follow-up piece too. So I will share that with you if you like, as soon as we nail those dates down. So she wants to do a ride along with an officer as well and talking about the school routes and, school zone signs, all of those things.
Well, maybe because this group, there's a lot of us who are geeks and we think this is really exciting stuff. But I think there's a segment somewhere around traffic calming and you can get one of our attractive, camera ready, staff here.
Shane.
To explain what some of these things, because I think maybe people don't know.
Right.
Like tonight, I was turning onto Mineral off of Pennsylvania, and the curb has been rebuilt to kind of bulb out there. And I don't know if people even appreciate the subtlety of some of that, but getting them to explain, hey, in 30 seconds, this is how some of these inexpensive projects have been implemented to keep riders and walkers safe. And it might be, I mean, it's a cheap way to get in front of a lot of eyeballs. And it won't just be Littleton, but traffic is not confined to Littleton. It's a regional thing. So if you could do more of that, I would encourage you to keep it up, because that was a great segment, and
Good.
more like that would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, and on my end, right, is obviously police, but David and I, now that Kelly, I don't want her to leave. Kelly Nerdy, who's retiring, but we all work very closely, right? So we'll continue to do that. And that's where we did in this last one, and I'll probably do too as well. With the CBS one, where I'm like, here's the officers, here's the police, here's the speed gun, here's this. Go talk to David, who can hook you up with these subject matter experts who can explain, what this curve is versus that curve, why we chose these routes, what that looks like,
Cops and kids, how are they working together? Some of the traffic cars, the cop cars that are parked at schools like at Arapahoe and Powell Middle School, they almost become invisible because they're just decoys. The other day I drove by and whoop, there's an officer right in the car, he's pulled up, he's watching what's going on. The more they can do that so that they don't just become invisible decoys, that could be another segment, how we're using how the SROs are working outside of the school
Yeah.
to keep the kids safe on bike routes. I think that would capture a lot of people's interest.
Our SROs do those traffic, right? They act as traffic crossing people.
Crossing guards.
Thank you. At every morning, so.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Does anybody else, any questions on the law enforcement side? Awesome. I'm glad you saw that. That makes me feel good. I'm like, yay.
Well, they showed it to the council.
They made us watch it.
They made you watch. They forced you.
Absolutely. I'm 0 for 3 on videos at council meetings. It might be me.
If you haven't watched the Broadway video, it's pretty good. See,
Great.
Nothing can be as bad as our last meeting.
that was pretty bad.
That was really bad.
When the mics kept going off?
Again, and again.
Like, I was doing a training once and then fire alarm kept going off and I was like, all right.
It's not meant to be.
Yeah, I'm like, maybe tomorrow.
We did postpone part of it.
Yeah. I can't remember, was any of this in the online?
Yes, these were the same slides and I apologize that this one hasn't been updated because the campaign or the event did occur. But in our October meeting, we'll have more information on, yep, I'll have those stats from our enforcement now in the fall. And then also, yeah, hopefully more information on the education side of things.
And that's tentatively planned for October 8th, right?
Yes, yeah.
With council, so.
Yeah, so that council meeting, we'll go over an update of, what we have been doing and some of our recommendations from our evaluations. And then also where we're trying to take this program into next year as well. One thing too, Shira, that I know we talked about this morning is that while the increased enforcement overtime opportunity is ending end of September for the police officers, we're hoping next year, once we get fully staffed up with police, and you can continue.
Yeah, so as I spoke to the chief, I actually walked in, I was like, hey, question, because you had a good question. So with our budget next year, right now, our goal, we're just not fully staffed. I don't know any police department, unfortunately, who is fully staffed. But we are working pretty hard to recruit, and we're pushing people through academy really quickly as well. So we're hopeful to be, basically we've been given X amount of police positions. And so we're hoping once those are filled, then we can better utilize, obviously, our folks to do increased enforcement. So that's our goal right now. We're just really in that, pushing that staffing and recruitment. So if you know anybody who wants to be a police officer, give them my number. Littleton's great to work for. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
How many officers are usually on duty at a time?
That's a good question. It's a rotating shift, so you're either your days, they call it swings, or your graves. And then it's about an 8 patrol team with a sergeant, I believe, if you're fully staffed, to answer that. And then obviously there's different elements, right? Our school resource officer team is, goodness, I don't know it off the top of my head. It's every middle school and high school here, including the Epic campus. And then our set team is also that other special team. And they're, I want to say now, 5 officers, including their sergeant. But obviously when things happen, they'll come in. We have an on-call and then our SWAT team and all of that stuff.
So with the number of schools, it would be challenging to have with 8 people, someone at a.
It is, especially right while they're dealing with calls and folks are calling 911 and all of that. My mom said something that was amazing to me the other day. I was telling her about a scene. She's like, somebody should have called 911. I was like, she did, or they did. That's us. They did.
That is.
Why we were there.
Yeah.
She's so funny.
I mean, I think the issue is staffing, because they have budget authority for 8 people on the set team, and that was supposed to be the traffic enforcement. And so if that isn't happening, it's because of lack of personnel, not lack of budget authority.
And it's challenging because you'll get folks through academy, and then they get on the street and they realize maybe this isn't for me.
I saw Police Academy, the movie. This isn't anything like it.
Right, this was nothing like it.
They're an age to have seen Police Academy.
Yeah, I could say,
That's like us.
that's very old.
You know what?
That is
I remember it.
they're showing that on Turner Classic.
It's like a Western at this point.
That's true.
You guys are.
We're the same age.
Well, but on a serious point, the more we can humanize our officers and increase that bond between community, the more people are gonna say, yeah, I'll do that job.
Right.
Because it's a tough job. It's a really tough job.
It is.
And we need them. And so that's David's, look to him to humanize them and do, yeah, up that staffing.
Free property tax for life if you become a.
Something like that. I mean, yeah, give them something. Throw them a bone.
We're only sales tax. We're only sales tax.
As long as it county.
That's why you can give it away, because it's.
Lots of problems.
And we'll not charge you property.
As a former school board member, those property taxes are very important.
Yes, they are.
Sure.
Well, yeah, but if we gave away Littleton's
Very important.
property tax that they assess, since they don't.
It's like 3% of the bill. I'm distracted.
All right,
I distract.
good. Anybody else?
I might sneak out because I've got.
Yeah.
You
guys do.
Yes, thank you. And let me know, as David handed out, I should have handed out my information as well. Feel free to, if you think of something later, contact me.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll just leave a couple cards over here.
That'd be great.
Continue on.
Ooh,
Sure.
that choose safe info,
Yes,
only because I want to give it to my granddaughter's school up in Arvada.
absolutely.
I mean,
If you will shoot me an email,
we're not unique.
well, and they're doing it in Parker, is my understanding, and she was very excited, so. I looped these guys into going to the meeting with me tomorrow. Now you-
I'm gonna stick around for a little bit.
Just enjoy that.
Yeah, that's what I look for.
Okay.
Now we actually have to do what we're gonna do, huh?
Please, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
Objectives.
So I'll say, you know, we kind of bounced around internally. Do we come up with like a way to format this discussion? And so we think this is probably not going to be the first of these discussions with TMB. So we thought rather than kind of have a stuffy, let's go through this and talk about that, that would just kind of open it up, see how you guys thought it went. And then, you know, we can talk through these if we want to, but this seemed to me, this seemed like the slide that kind of summarizes the presentation well. So that's why I put this up as a reminder for me mostly, but also for you. So yeah, we didn't have really any set agenda, but would love to, you know, hear what you guys thought about the presentation. And what you guys, maybe we could dive into ideas on how we like start to flesh these goals and objectives out, so.
Could we start with you, David, and kind of work around the table and get thoughts on
How it went?
yeah, just first person kind of feedback?
I thought it went well, and none of us did the death by PowerPoint, read the slides.
Yeah, that's not.
Hopefully council appreciated that.
I did. We can all read.
And we've, you know, we all extrapolated and sort of expository speeches, and I thought as a group, we did really well. And I think council received it that way. So, yeah, this looks like a fairly good summation and good place to start in terms of, yeah, you know, we can all argue about, who should switch places with 4 and 6 should be, yeah.
I don't agree with that.
We
at all.
don't, yeah, I just, yeah, whatever. So yeah, I think we've made a first bullshit at pulling it together. And it's also, as Pam reminded us, we've got the plan to figure out, and I think this gives us a good leg up on getting that started as well. Because a lot of the same stuff goes into it.
What about you guys? Kind of just a extemporaneous contributor. You didn't have to follow any slide.
Yeah,
What was your thought?
I would say, I would probably start by saying that I moved back to Littleton 5 years ago. I started going to council meetings then to talk about bike safety. And from council and from others, it was like, we are a car town. Why are you even discussing this? And that where we are now is so dramatically different than then, you know, and that made, I'm very happy that the progress has been made that we have made through lots of people doing a lot of work. So it was really encouraging to hear council, you know, receive it as well as they did. And Steve has continually banged the drum of where are we getting the money? You know, and I think that's a good question, because these things will involve money. And as far as money, have no money right now, you know, to quote Gru from The Incredible. Grew from. Minions. Despicable Me, yeah. So, sorry. But,
Fruit is a different one.
yes. So, yeah, that I think is really important. And then I really hope that, like, I feel like cities often operate in terms of like, what do we put in a Littleton report to say that we did, you know, and those types of things. But I don't care about any of that. I care about was infrastructure built, you know, and so that is what it ultimately comes down to, I feel like, is, you know, what are the actual outcomes of this outside of, you know, we had this great Safer Streets program, what do we actually accomplish? And so that's, my hope is that the momentum is continued, that we get stuff done. And it's not just like a bulletin board, like we had this initiative and did this study, but we actually got it done. That's fun.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree. I thought it went well. I thought council was engaging, seemed to really be interested in the points we were making. It went by a lot quicker than I expected, even though we ran long. I felt like we could have gone on for, you know, another hour potentially.
Their biggest fear.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, thank you for not doing that.
Yeah, but I guess as a follow-up, I thought, well, perhaps we do this again in 6 months, come back, you know, another status update. You know, we told you our goals and objectives. We've been continuing to work on it, and here's what we've learned, and kind of follow up on next steps and actions. If you think the council would be agreeable to that, I think it would be worthwhile. I think it was good that we kind of got grounded on the financial part of it. I mean, there's a lot of great suggestions, but yeah, how is it gonna get paid for? And I think that's an important part of the conversation. But yeah, I thought it went well.
As somebody who's on kind of both sides of this table.
Well, first of all, I think you guys did a really good job. I think it was a good presentation, and I think the pacing was good and the conversation was good. And you know, what I hoped for and we accomplished was that you guys were able to have a conversation with the council about what kind of your vision, your vision for how to improve safety in the city. And I thought that part of it went really well. And then, you know, I think a couple things really were accomplished in the meeting. 6 months ago, there were members of the council that were kind of trying to decide, should we become a Vision Zero city? And they didn't really want to think about it. They wanted somebody else to think about it. And they asked you guys to think about it, and you came back and said, well, kinda, but not really. Instead, we think you should do this. And so you accomplished something there, and that the city now has is not going to be, they're not going to be a Vision Zero. They're going to, they're kind of more embracing the safer streets Littleton. And you explained to them that, so that first, the Vision Zero included the Vision Zero conversation, which is accomplished. Second of all, you explained to them what you thought our commitment, the council's commitment should be to bike and ped safety. It was, make sure you have a person that's doing this work, that this is going to take a long time, that this is a cultural shift. It's not just infrastructure. And you kind of were more, you guys got to be more thoughtful about this than just your capital planning budget. And I think that was really valuable. But I also think, for many of the council members, and particularly Steve, you guys were more of an amen choir for them, and kind of reinforced the direction that he and, I think he and Kyle really want to go. And that's helpful from a political perspective, because they can say, it's not just me, it's the transportation, our committee is saying that this is a direction for us to go as well. And I think that, so you added kind of political power, political weight to some of the things that people want to do on the council. So I think those are things that you guys accomplished through your work, and I think it was really, really valuable. Last week, or our last meeting, one of the things that we did was we finally kind of accepted or approved the Broadway corridor plan. And it's kind of had me start thinking about, there's really 3 ways where things get built, like in the city. There are things where there are opportunities to get grant funds, and people will give us grant money to do things, and we try to leverage our own. And so the Broadway corridor plan just kind of creates more opportunities for us to get grant funds. And you guys recommended that we have this Safer Streets plan that allows us to get more grant funds and drive that. The second way that things get done is through staff, where staff is really making a lot of the decisions. They'll kind of flow them by us, but this is what we're going to do. And all of the temporary safety measures that are out there, those are things that staff really decided to do. I mean, you guys got recommendations from the community, but the third way is that council decides to do it, and we're kind of entering that season when we just, that we're doing our budget process, and we're going to do our budget, and I think we're going to have, I quite frankly, I can't figure it out, but I think we're going to have 5 to 10 million. 5 to 10 million that we're going to have to kind of send to capital projects over the next year. And we're going to have to decide, are those capital projects around traffic safety? Are those capital projects around Kettering Park and Kettering Lake? Are those projects around Littleton Boulevard, what's going on in Littleton, or are they other things? And so I think you guys kind of helped us tee off this capital planning process that we're engaged in with the money that we control. And, said, you guys should definitely be spending that, a big chunk of that money on bike and ped safety. So, you began that conversation or, you know, kind of did an amen of that's what you guys should do with your stuff. And I think it will influence our, you know, our conversations in a positive way. So, but I think, I gotta say, so I think the next thing for us to do is figure out how to get going on the master plan. That's the next thing. And I gotta. But I want you guys to feel like, I really feel like your work accomplished things, and I appreciate it. I want you to know that, you know, you guys moved the ball down the field, and that was really valuable, so thank you.
The idea, Beck. Derek?
I think the presentation went well. I think what really stuck out to me was after we presented to the council, we got to interact with critics and advocates for what we were doing. And the one thing that kind of stood out to me was there was some hope. There was some like, oh, they're actually doing something that is making progress. Now, I know kind of to Michael's thing, the next biggest step is gonna be accountability. And I wanna be able to take those critics and advocates and hopefully in 6-12 months, they're just like, you know, you've done more and take it away all the expectations we ever had.
I echo a lot of what was said. I do think we owe it to council to identify some high leverage targets that we should go after. We don't have a ton of money, you know, when you talk about 5 to 10 million, that goes quickly in capital projects. And this is where I think our traffic planners and engineers can help us to identify. I think it's those little gaps in the networks that that might keep us from being able to really have smooth flowing bike routes. We argue about whether we call them arterials, bike networks, bike height track. I don't know what you call them, but I know what they are. They're bike routes that allow me to get from one part of the city to the other. And I think if we can finish some of those, advertise that progress as a way that says, you know, maybe we send a wave of cyclists from all the way down from my neighborhood down Lee Gulch and all the way into downtown for some sort of a bike ride. And we also have different ones that would emphasize how you can actually traverse the city with that. And here's how your tax dollars have enhanced the livability of it. I think that's powerful. We want to be able to say, this isn't about favoring bikes over cars or anything. It's about improving the quality of life for all of us that are living here. And so I think being able to actively demonstrate what you guys have done. I love these ideas that you've come up with. Now let's turn them into some showpieces that we can take back to the city and say, hey, look what you've got, Littleton. This is an amenity that's, you know, first world. It's top of its class, and we have some of that already with Mary Carter, and I think Big Gulch is another. And then if we can do some of these others, my dream would be maybe that Mineral Avenue is connected a little bit better, the protected bike route. Some of those things I think are maybe still aspirational at this time, but I think that's what we as a board can kind of help identify the things that are gonna most quickly give us some high leverage results that we can point to and say, this is why this is good for all of us.
And David, this comes back to your desk, because I think a lot of people, I know a lot of people don't know all the various ways on trails that you can get from A to B that already exist, even though there are gaps. But I got people in my building that don't know about the city trail that runs along the track.
Yeah.
You kidding me? Come on.
Yeah, so maybe you do a feature each week, you know, exploring with David.
David and David on the road.
Yeah.
These are the names I know.
Yeah.
That's right. The whole Sesame Street band.
Yeah, we have talked about wanting to, you know, Denver has like a really nice bike map. doing something like that. And we have, we have the data. It's just putting it in a
Getting it out there.
printable form or digital form. And we actually had a GIS intern who put it into like Google Maps, and so that you could load it into your own Google Maps. We just haven't done anything.
South Suburban's got that cool bike routes map. That's the one that always, that's the brochure that always disappears the fastest at their booths. I've noticed. I've got a couple in my office that I hoard. Cause yeah, those South Suburban bike maps, yeah, they go real quick.
So maybe he's the guy that can take the GIS work and make it more readily available. Yeah. All right, well, we're an hour into the meeting. What else do we want to accomplish tonight, Shane, that we've laid out here?
Yeah, I mean, this was, I can go back to the agenda, but that was. Those were the the things we covered was, enforcement, communications, and then kind of deeper.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's good, and I think that the next steps, we've got, our October, Bike About Town thing that everybody hopefully is pointing toward. And, I hope you can join us for that. It's
I gotta pump up my tires.
no, it's a bus ride.
Oh, I was really excited when you said bike
I know,
about town.
I was
and
going, wait, I thought we were doing the
think that's a
bus.
really effective way for us.
Maybe
to-
we should do that one
I
too.
think that'd be amazing.
Bike bus.
Yes,
I
yeah.
think we need, yeah, it should be a bike.
I've asked council to come and ride areas with me to experience it on a bike. And I think that a bike bus in October, like for instance, okay. I was gonna say, I went from Kiln just across, there's a new kiln right where Pedal is right there, a
Okay.
co-working space, and I have office space there now. And I rode over there and I came across, and as the road turns by the donut place, I was like, I need to go left, but I don't wanna be in the way of the cars. But I have to go left, and they're coming in both ways, and I was like, I just want council to ride that on a bike and feel it, you know what I mean? So, so something like that for the October event could be good, I think.
As far as like actual events that we're looking at doing next year, I'm hoping to put together some walk and bike events where we would work with city council and basically like for their district, we would host, and maybe like you all could help us with that, right? Like host a coming out, and depending on what their preference of mode of transportation basically is, we would do a walking tour of their community or biking tour and have the community members, invite them out and so that they could just walk and talk or bike and talk with their council member. And then as far as a bike bus type event, like October is walk and bike month, or not, sorry, walk and bike to school day. I can't remember which one it was. Was it walk and bike? I think it was, yeah. So October would be a great time for us trying to put on like our first attempt of a bike bus type thing with one or more schools. So we'd love to like loop you all into that event.
Okay.
It also happens to be the walk and bike to school day is October 9th, the day after our big old presentation to council. So, yeah.
You never get to rest, do you? No rest.
Just thinking
for the
about,
wicked.
my favorite day this summer was bike to work day and a meet, greet and eat the same day. We gotta talk about scheduling that on.
Long.
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta talk to Dr. Cog about when they schedule that bike to work day. I don't know.
You know anybody?
I'm just there for the free burritos.
Well, I propose that we shut this off early tonight and let everybody go home.
It's not like
This
they
was
didn't put in extra hours over the past 2 months.
there was a lot of extra effort getting ready for all
We're
of
not
this.
slacking off.
Yeah.
But I want to be clear as possible. You guys, you accomplished something with your work. It was valuable. So I appreciate it, and I think the council does too.
Well, that's good to know, and I think, if you sense that there's an opportunity for us to advise again, whether it be in the form of a memo to council or a visit, please let us know. And I think as we go forward with some of these things, developing target opportunities, I think those will be things we want to pass forward from this group, things that we think would really make a difference, whether it's that section of that route you talked about, or educating people more on, hey, did you know there was this thing called the City Trail? And I think those are things that can really be powerful. So we'll try to pass them along.
We have a meeting next week. The board and commissions meeting that I think both of us have a comment on. This board has been doing semi-annual councils or
Yes.
memos to council.
Right.
I think that's probably what we're talking about at that meeting next week, so we will let you know timeline on that. I think for the work y'all have been doing, it's just really memorializing the presentation into a memo. So
Okay.
that's just on the horizon as an FYI.
Okay.
Also add things to think about. So Ken and I will meet with Tom and Jeff on the 4th to plan the September meeting. The September meeting will be awfully close to October 5th.
Yeah.
So maybe we can discuss what that looks like, but maybe if you guys have ideas, email those to Tom and Jeff for what that October 5th looks like. If you guys do want it to be a bike bus or something or in the past, we've just all gotten in the omnibus and driven to different project locations. So it's your guys' kind of field trip, right? So it's not, it's for you guys to decide, so. But.
The thing I like about the bus is that we can cover a lot of ground and do it as a group. And but if there's a bike component, then I would like to my bicycle warriors over there to help me figure out how we could do that.
Yeah, it depends on what's on the route too, like if the route's really spread apart,
Yeah.
that may be prohibitive, but if it's closer, it just depends on where we're going.
Yeah, I mean, we could, hybrid and, like maybe bike around downtown, start at the, here, bike around downtown, like different stuff, come
That
back.
might be great.
Hop in the bus and or vice versa. So.
Yeah, no, I love that. Okay, well, we'll talk about.
Then we could play on Prince Street,
That was what
issues there
Yeah.
and get a better feel.
Yeah, so bring your ideas back, and we'll talk about them at our next meeting.
Yeah, and
That'll be an agenda item for us.
yeah, and we'll work with Colleen just to let people, because that's a Saturday and it's usually a couple of hours. We can have her send out something that says it'll be something planned so that people are aware and can put it in their calendars. We don't have to get the details out,
Okay.
like a day before. We'll obviously do sooner than that, but yeah, I think if we really figure that out at the next meeting, that would be good.
And I noticed the other day, we were in Woodlawn Shopping Center, there's a new e-bike shop that's just gone in.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, nobody knows. So I just, in there going to the dollar store and went, oh my gosh, look at that.
Nice.
So you could get a new bike, Tom.
What is the plan for when we're doing the TMP?
Yeah.
Robert?
Yeah.
No, well, I don't know how these things work in the city. My intent is I have meetings with the city manager every other week. And my intent during the next meeting is to talk about A, what a good job you guys did, and B, how do we get this started? Because that feels like the next, in my mind, that feels like the next big assignment. And I will, so that's kind of as much as I can do, but I will do that and try to get that ball rolling. And obviously I can talk to other people as well, but it's really the city manager that will help. And I'll talk to the mayor.
Yeah, I will say, I think a lot of what we discussed and have been discussing, right, like the guiding principles that was brought up, kind of a pipeline of projects, all those types of things, to me really makes sense. That comes from the TMP, right? Like that is the guiding document with the overall, guiding principles and goals and our pipeline of projects and whatnot. So I think a lot of that stuff will become more clear if we can update the TMP sooner rather than later, but money and capacity question.
vision, plan, resources, execution. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, and, you know, what we're gonna do over the next 3 months is do the budget for the year, for next year. And so what my conversation is gonna be is kind of, one that makes, now that you're talking, what makes sense to me is how do we, what warm up can the team, can we do now before we allocate the money for the next round of consultants to help with that work? So.
Yes, you took it right out of my mouth. I think there's a lot of work that we can do. Before even, contracting a consultant to start with the TMP. You know, this group was formed in the middle of the TMP creation last time, and so I know that process was a little funky, and so I think, for this update, we really want to engage you all from the beginning or pre-beginning of the project, right? And so I think there is quite a bit of work we can do before we even get under contract with someone, so.
Yeah, and we tried to go back and do a section, kind of an update, encouraging everybody to reread it. Maybe a year back or back 18 months or more ago. And that's just an easy way to ask all of us to go back, dig it out, reread it, ask yourself, does it make sense? What is it lacking? And where do we want to beef it up so that before you put the RFP on the street, we know that there are going to be some things that we want to have amended, improved, whatever.
Yeah.
If you're like me and you're a picture book guy, you could probably start by looking at the maps and saying, hey, that's where a lot of the recommendations are housed. Say, hey, does this make sense? And then kind of go back in and read the text. If you're like, well, how did we get here? What was the process to get there? So, yeah, because it's a beefy document, with appendices and stuff. It's several hundred pages, so.
We talked about too at one of our last planning meetings that we'll do like a report on progress for the TMP.
Yeah.
Towards the end of this year, beginning of next year too, so we can get an update on
Yep.
what we have been able to accomplish and maybe where things we haven't been able to get to yet. So.
And talk to us a little bit too about how is that really used? Is it used, or are we? Is it like a lot of plans created? We know that it's there, but we don't really use it. And if it's that latter case where it's not that much a part of your day-to-day work, why not? And why should we spend a lot of money on it if we're not going to use it and need it? How do we actually make it relevant and integrated with what's going on with your work rhythms? So maybe talk to us a little bit, pull back the curtain a little bit on how that translates into the kinds of projects that you've generated.
Do you mean now or like a future?
Well, maybe how it's been working and how you'd like it to work, kind of thing. I think might be enlightening.
Yeah, well, I think, a lot of the work that you guys did in kind of talking to the other cities, I think one of the things that we saw over and over again from cities who do it well is that their TMP is very closely tied to their CIP. And I think, 5 years ago, right, when we were doing this, right, our very first TMP, we have all this list of projects and here's priorities kind of based on the values that we think are best, but there is not a 5-year plan for you're gonna do these projects in this year, blah, blah, blah. Because that's a good way to hold yourself accountable, right? And things need to change sometimes, right? Like a sinkhole opens up, you gotta fix it, you have to divert resources, right? That doesn't happen here.
Put some duct tape on.
Yeah.
15 people.
Right, yeah. So I think for me, and I don't think the TMP is useless, but I do think that we kind of have some conflict of like, it is a document that has all the things we'd like to do, but it doesn't necessarily lay out a plan for like, go here, then go here, then go here. So we're doing the best we can to, pick those projects off, but I think me personally, I would like the next one to have a little bit more of like a, here's step by step over at least the next 5 years till your next update of what to pursue. So.
I'll say that it's, for me, it feels like right now we are currently processing in a very reactionary, or not very, but in a somewhat of a reactionary type of structure.
Yeah.
And we need to have a bit more of a proactive approach and having that plan set out for what do we want Littleton to look like in 5 years, 10 years, 15, and how, in order for us to actually get there, we have to take the time to say, okay, what are the values or objectives that are gonna guide us to get there? And then based on those, what are the actionable items and strategies that we are gonna do? And then looking at those and saying, okay, now, what are the resources we need? What are the difficulty to implement? What is the cost or the time to implement, the difficulty, those, and then ultimately, what's the impact of this strategy, right? Like you could have something like restructuring, finding a sustainable source of, safety funding, and then as well as a strategy in this plan that's working on improving our signage and wayfinding. Those two things have different impact, I think. And so it's all of that though has a then evaluation component that we would have to it that keeps us accountable and transparent to the public of saying, okay, we said that this is what we're gonna do with your taxpayer dollars and make your, the community better for all of us. And here is how we said we're gonna do it. And here is what, we are keeping up to or not.
Very important.
Yeah, I was gonna say something that might help the TMB with that is maybe we could also go over what are the legal enforcement mechanisms that the TMB has on development, has ties to the comp plan, to the city code ordinance, and how all that comes together to make, say, new project A meet these goals, and to kind of address what Matt was bringing up earlier.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think, the development is a good thing, right? Cause we have, I think, some developers who wanna do good, right? And I think they're making bike improvements. They're probably not all the improvements we'd like to make, but because it's not laid out very specifically, right? There's nothing we can hold them to, right, on some of these. And we don't wanna be business unfriendly, right? We understand they're in it to make money, but the more detail we can have, the better. So, yeah.
I've heard from a couple of them that the difference between putting in good bike infrastructure and no bike infrastructure is not enormously different, if you're doing something anyway, adding a curb, or something to make a protected bike lane is not prohibitively expensive. They were like, we don't really care about that. We just need your city to tell us what we need to build. And for instance, what's the development right by Chipotle by Littleton High School, but there's a new apartment complex coming in on Powell, I think.
Powers?
Yeah, Powers.
So,
Yeah. So they were I was chatting with that developer and they were saying, we would gladly put a bike lane in, but it would only be for our apartment complex, and then it would end right there with the parked car right on the road, So we
They could at least put a net in there.
Yeah, just to catch people, yeah.
Well, and that's where interim plans, that's where measures to build it piece by piece, but that you get a complete system at the end. But I could literally go into this for hours and hours on good methods that we could do, but I think we're gonna be talking about that over the next couple months as well.
Yeah. Cause it seems like updating the engineering docs are also potentially important, and expectations and things there too,
That's usually what happens after the TMB is updated, is it now provides guidance to the engineering design.
yeah. Like for instance, Jackass and Mineral, that intersection is going to have much better infrastructure. Was that just because the right people were in the room when it was being designed, or because the engineering docs require it? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so Jackass and Mineral, that wasn't related to a development, that was a grant funded project. Yeah, but that's where, so if a developer came in there and somehow
Sorry, that unrelated to a developer, just was the good design that we landed on because we were only permitted to make a good design, or because the right people were in the room.
Yeah, it was a
when
dumb
it was
lot.
being
Right,
designed.
yeah. That's where our TMP, and I think sometimes it gets this bad rep that it's useless, and it's not, right? It could use improvement though, but the TMP does say that Mineral is a bike priority street, right? And so that was part of that decision too, and that was there's so many names, Safer Main Streets, I believe is what it was called at the time, right? It was some of the funding from the state that during the pandemic to improve access to transit. And so that was one right there where we could point to our plan and say hey, here's a bike priority street. We know that there's a barrier to the transit stop because of the railroad that, that runs along Santa Fe.
Yeah,
So that's where that came out of, yeah.
It's the only one for a very long way because of the train, you have to go way up to Lee Gulch or to Prince in essence, or not Prince, but like Main Street. Or we'd have to go down to county line. So it was the only shot that we had there, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
But I think what I'm saying is, I would love it if it was safe and accessible and like all these things by design.
Yeah.
And not just relying on someone in the room to be like, to notice it and to be like, oh, this is a bike path, so we have to do it. You know, just to make it so that is the way that we build.
Yeah.
And I would like to understand a little more what you're saying about the developers saying that it's not much more money if it's specified. Because what we don't want to do is make housing unaffordable by adding too many development constraints. So they go, oh my God, we've got to do all of this and this and this.
Like minimum parking requirements.
Well, yeah. Two sides to that too, but we do want to strike that balance, and I want to understand that, because none of that stuff is free, and I don't want to see us advocate for something that is counterproductive in the end.
Yeah. But I don't, like, from my discussions with them, it's a negligible cost, you know, to make
Yeah.
good, but, well, and also like, bike lanes can have thinner concrete, bike lanes can have, you know, the surface wears down less quickly. You know, because there's less weight on it, so there's other aspects of it that make it so, yeah, that's a very long rabbit hole, but yes.
And I'll say secondhand, like the developers who work in the city have done a lot. I think the big developments you think of, like they're on board for this stuff. I'm not getting the same story. They're like, oh yeah, we'll just do it. Like, tell us. Like at some point they're like, that's enough, right?
Probably different messages to different parties.
Yeah, right. And I mean, they're doing good. I mean, a lot of the big developments that are going in, there are definitely improvements that are coming in with it. And also we have internal discussions about like, wouldn't it be great to go ahead and do this? And they're like, yeah, it would be great, you know, so we can let somebody who works in that space come talk about that a little.
Yeah, no, that'd be good. Okay, well, listen, thanks, everybody. Let's put a stake in this one and get back together in about a month.
Good.
And we'll see you folks on the 4th. And look at the agenda.
How's the chocolate?
Hey, Matt, thank you.
Oh, it's so cold.
Yes.
I love that.
That's nice.